The Beatles are coming. The Beatles are coming. The Beatles are coming. The Beatles conquer America today on another vinyl show. Ike Frasier Industries presents another vinyl show with Ike Frasier. Hey everybody, it's your old pal Ike Frasier. I hope everybody is doing well. Today on another vinyl show, it's the Beatles conquer America. Here's one of my favorite Beatlemania trinkets. It's a flyer from Capitol, and it was only for regions that VJ had good distribution, and so Capitol's like, if you buy Meet the Beatles, you get a free picture. So that helped turn the tides towards the Meet the Beatles record, but that's really cool. A lot of great exploitation records came out then, like Ed Rooney's Interview album. That's a real wild ride. And most of the time you can pick those up for like $10. But Meet the Beatles, one of the greatest debut albums of all time, and that 50th anniversary version that we like to talk about on that sweet blue vinyl. Mono, all analog, very reasonably priced, and really sweet, great packaging on that. But Meet the Beatles comes out January 20th, 1964, but VJ beats them to the punch with Introducing the Beatles. And this Introducing the Beatles right here, as we can see, we can get it out of there. That's one of your Please Please Me's right there. Now it's very hard, and you can see on the Taste of Honey, there's no hickey on there. So that is the real deal right there from early 1964. So when all that was going on, and version 2 comes out of this with Please Please Me instead, then it starts going up the charts. And so what we end up with is the battle where Capitol says, you can't put that out. They stop it. They win the injunction. They get a temporary hold on it. They print as many of these as they can. They get another hold from Capitol, and it goes like that all year till Meet the Beatles is the #1 album of 1964, and Introducing the Beatles is the #2 album of 1964. It sells about 1.3 million copies. Just incredible. 5 million copies. So you can see the difference right there. But they're both great albums. Now, the Capitol album has the tapes doctored up a little bit with the reverb and echo by your buddy Dave Dexter. But this one right here, Introducing, these are the straight tapes from EMI, except the cutoff of the 1, 2, 3 at the beginning of I Saw Her Standing There. So it's a column back. That's the third version of version 1's cover. So this is pretty hard to get, but pretty sweet. I hope you guys enjoyed the video today on the earliest American records of Beatlemania. And I'm Ike Frasier, and we want to say thank you to you guys for watching. The new people who've liked our videos, we really appreciate you. And the new subscribers and our regular subscribers. You guys are what make it happen. So we're really glad to have you all come along for the ride and enjoy the Beatles Conquer America. Up next. In early 1963, president of Capitol Records, Mr. Alan Livingston, has been hearing the rumblings over in the UK about a new pop band called the Beatles. EMI tells him he should put them out, but he's like, I don't know. So he says Dave Dexter to listen to these new Beatle tapes. Dave Dexter's like, they're a bunch of long-haired kids. There's nothing we can do with that. So EMI sends Trans Global into work, and Trans Global is a company that takes EMI masters and licenses them with other companies around the world. So Brian Epstein and the Beatles talk, and the Beatles say, we are not going to America until we have a #1 record. Well, Trans Global meets up with VJ Records, started by Vivian Carter and James Bracken. And, of course, the initials of their name make VJ. And as VJ 498, they released the first American Beatles record, Please Please Me. But they don't really pay much attention to it, and they spell the Beatles with 2 T's. And that's released on February 7th, 1963.
Now, a radio station in Chicago, WSL, has a great DJ there, and his name is Dick Biondi. And Dick is a big fan of this record, Please Please Me, and he loves to play it on his radio show. And in his Silver Dollar survey, a local chart for Chicago, Please Please Me comes in at number 35, which is pretty respectable for an unknown British band in the home of the blues, Chicago. 7,300 copies sold. Well, Dick, he moves on to a different radio station, and when he goes to that radio station, there's a new Beatles single out on VJ 522, and that's From Me to You. And, well, Dick's a fan of this record, too, released on May 27th, 1963, and he starts playing it. KRLA, it gets to number 32, and KDEO, it gets to number 20. Now, in Dick Clark's survey, number 39 in Philadelphia. So that charts in 2 different cities in the top 40. And with that radio exposure, From Me to You sells 22,000 copies. EMI had already sent the master tapes to VJ Records for the Please Please Me album, and VJ was getting ready to start production, printing about 6,000 slicks that all say printed in the USA, but then they ran into some problems, and production was stopped because of lack of cash flow. Now, EMI says, well, we don't have any payments from them either, so who's going to put out the next Beatles record? Well, Brian Epstein's on the phone again, and he's like, Transglobal, you got to do something. We've got a great million-selling record and nobody to release it in the United States. So Transglobal gets to work because they've already shot Beatle tapes to a lot of people who didn't want them, and Dick Clark knows that they were number 40, so he is a part owner of Swan Records out of Philadelphia. And so Dick Clark, he's even going to put it on his TV show. So they're hoping that this is going to help out a lot. And released September 16th, 1963, it ends up only selling about 1,000 copies. Then, nothing. Even when George Harrison visits America in late 1963, he can't even find any Beatle records. So again, Brian gets on the phone and he calls Capitol Records up and he's like, here comes the 5th Beatles single. You guys won't release it? This is going to be a huge success. He's like, Alan says, I've not even really listened to the Beatles. And Brian's like, please listen to them. So he agrees to listen to the Beatles, and he takes the master tape and he gives the Beatles a listen. And he's like, there's something really going on here. This is really something. So Alan Livingston, he gets back on the phone and he's like, you get Brian Epstein on the phone for me. Brian picks up the phone and then the negotiations start. Alan says, I believe the Beatles could be very successful in America, but nobody has promoted them in a proper kind of way. Brian's like, we're getting ready to be on Ed Sullivan. Capitol says, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to give you $40,000. Now, people have said $50,000, $70,000. Alan Livingston said they didn't even spend $10,000. But Brian Epstein tells the Beatles now Capitol is going to release it. And so he's pretty excited. Alan Livingston is like, okay, we can get this happening with you, Brian. Let's do it. So Capitol Records is going to release the next Beatles record, and Alan Livingston gets Capitol production in motion, and he tells Dave Dexter, we're putting the Beatle record out no matter what you think. You better get to work and prepare that for the American market. So Capitol's art department gets in there, and they change the front cover from being black and white with an incredible blue tint, put a big font on there, Meet the Beatles, phenomenal new combo from England, incredible, with the press campaign of the Beatles are coming. Just like the British were coming back in the 1770s, the Beatles are here now, and I Want to Hold Your Hand is released early on December 26, 1963. And the radio stations start jamming that out. Capitol's promo department is putting out a lot of materials. Radio stations are picking it up, and they're like, the Beatle record is really great, and there's She Loves You as well, starting to pick up play. Now, Brian is very pleased with Capitol's decision to release I Want to Hold Your Hand and Meet the Beatles, and Capitol again starts the art department steaming. They give the Beatle record to the Capitol Records Club. They have in-store displays showing the Beatles. Well, VJ, realizing that they have some hot stuff going on here, January 3rd, 1964, they released the Please Please Me and From Me to You single as VJ 581. And that is a big seller. It's released in a picture sleeve. And the corresponding album introducing the Beatles that they had started production on but never finished in 63 comes out with no back cover art. So they put the ad back on one version of it, and that's released on January 10th, 1964 with the song Love Me Do. It's released in mono and stereo, and with Love Me Do and P.S. I Love You would end up being released with the ad back that has 25 other great VJ albums you could purchase. The blank back, which exactly means that there is nothing on the back cover at all, a blank slick, and column backs, which for the P.S. I Love You are the least amount of covers printed. So VJ is very excited to get these out stereo. Only about 2,200 copies were pressed. January 11th, 1964, I Want to Hold Your Hand is 80 in the Billboard charts. January 16th, 1964, Capitol gets an injunction against VJ Records to stop production of Introducing the Beatles because it is a copyright infringement. Now, these court cases would last on and off, and VJ would press records as quick as they could. So 80,000 copies were pressed before the injunction. Now, in Paris, France, the Beatles are playing concerts where they are becoming quite popular, and Brian Epstein has the great privilege to tell the Beatles, "You are number one in America. I Want to Hold Your Hand" is the number one record in the United States, and the Beatles and George Martin party all night. Capitol, again, with the national record news, tells everybody about Beatlemania sweeping America. And finally, on January 20th, 1964, Capitol Records releases Meet the Beatles, the record that changes the industry forever, selling 5 million copies in its first year. They're in such a hurry to get it out that the mono and stereo first pressing East Coast copies have no publishing credits, becoming quite a rare record. Released in stereo and mono, both versions have no publishing on the very first pressing, and that's about 200,000 copies, mono and stereo included. So there's not a lot of stereo copies. VJ gets Introducing the Beatles back on the record shelf, but this time replacing Love Me Do and P.S. I Love You with Please Please Me and Ask Me Why, becoming the second best-selling album. Swan re-releases She Loves You, sends promo copies out to the radio stations, and stock copies with this beautiful picture sleeve on January 25th, 1964. I think they stole that picture from Capitol. Now, MGM Records buys the Tony Sheridan tapes, or at least leases them, and releases My Bonnie. And that's released on January 27th, 1967 on MGM Records. And even though Tony Sheridan's singing, the Beatles are backing him up, and it ends up getting in the pop charts all the way to number 26. Now, back in the UK, things are hot with Beatlemania, and the Beatles are just so busy. Every day, some kind of event's going on, and the Ronettes are in town. So everybody wants to go see the Ronettes because they're everybody's favorite American group. Here's George with the Ronettes and Phil Spector. Well, I Want to Hold Your Hand is still riding number one at February 1st, and Capitol releases a promo album to help promote Meet the Beatles, and it has this boy on it, and here we see the label for it right here. A very rare promo LP, pretty exciting right there. Capitol releases a jukebox EP as a compact 33. Those became very rare. You see a copy of that label right there, just beautiful, in stereo only. And the Beatles are ready to come to America. Here we see them in the airport lobby getting ready. And on the plane with them, Phil Spector. Ringo says he walks the whole time back to America. The radio stations are pumping I Want to Hold Your Hand and She Loves You, Please Please Me. Every Beatles song that they can get, they're playing. But Capitol is the winner with I Want to Hold Your Hand and Meet the Beatles, the top-selling single and album in America. New York City. Murray the K is pumping out the Beatles songs and telling everybody what time the Beatles will land in New York City. Everybody knows what Beatle time it is, what the Beatle weather is, and the arrival of the Beatles is incredible. Everybody is excited to see them, and it is just Beatlemania from the time that the plane sets down. No one had really ever seen incredibly funny interviews like that before. The Beatles command the attention of the press. February 8th, they go see all the sights in New York City while George is recuperating from the flu. And then here we see them at the hotel looking out the window at all the adoring fans. Ed Sullivan, February 9th, 1964. One of the largest television crowds in TV history, with an incredible 73 million viewers. And here we see the Beatles receiving their gold records from Capitol on February 10th, 1964 for I Want to Hold Your Hand and Meet the Beatles. Then it's on the train to D.C. February 11th, 1964 is the Beatles' first true concert in America in Washington, D.C., where they play In the Round. Now they go back to New York City after they play in D.C. for their prestigious debut at Carnegie Hall. Now, that is a pretty big show, and we see here the crowds is really the first time that a rock band has taken over Carnegie Hall. And after these shows, on February 12th, 1964, Swan Records comes and presents the Beatles and George Martin with a gold disc for She Loves You. Then it's off to Miami. And we see the Life magazine cover, very famous right there. The Beatles swimming in the pool, February 14th, 1964. The Beatles get ready for their second live performance, February 16th, 1964, with good old Ed Sullivan. 70 million TV viewers this time, 3 million shy of the last time. On February 18th, they meet Muhammad Ali. And there's great pictures of them with Muhammad, just incredible. And then the Beatles finally get to rest, soaking up some sun, poolside in Miami. Then it's back to New York. And from New York City, they will catch a plane back home to the UK on February 21st, 1964. And the British fans are glad to see them come back home. Well, what could the values be of some of these earliest of Beatlemania records? Well, you might be surprised at the value, my friends. Here is an original Capitol I Want to Hold Your Hand with picture sleeve on Discogs that went for about $100. I Want to Hold Your Hand picture sleeve on eBay with beautiful clean record, $120. And we got a harder one here. Discogs, $112 for She Loves You with the original picture sleeve. And on eBay, a mint copy went for $506. Now, the September 1963 version of She Loves You on Swan with no dropout on the label and machine stamp numbers, eBay, $676. Then we have the incredible VJ promo for From Me to You. And that's VJ522 on Discogs, $400. On eBay, $2,100. Now here we see the early 64 white label with blue print from Swan. That's a very early and rare pressing. That went for $795 on eBay. And the white label promo from 1964 with Swan Records envelope sold for an incredible $2,000 on eBay. Now here we see the mono with no publishing credits on the label, and we'll see that label here again. No publishing credits means no BMI and no ASCAP on the label. Now, the highest a mono has went for recently with no publishing credits on eBay, that price is going to be an incredible $1,000. Now, remember, these are near mint copies, no publishing credits. Now, the stereo version with no publishing credits on Capitol Rainbow label, no ASCAP, no BMI. Look at that beautiful stereo label right there. Very nice. eBay, $2,200. Now, even rarer right here is a really great compact 33 for jukeboxes only with 6 songs on it. These do not come up very often, have mini record covers and tags. $3,000 on eBay for a 6-song EP. Now, the incredible VJ 498, that was $3,000 for that. Mono VJ, add back, $2,375. A mono blank back, $5,000. And a mono column back, $7,500 for near mint copies of each of those. A sealed copy with the sticker for Twist and Shout and Please Please Me. Sealed. This is an incredible record right here with a column back for Please Please Me. And this one sells for an incredible $6,200. Now here is a stock copy of Please Please Me with the 1 T, so Beatles is spelled correctly on the label, and a stock copy, meaning it's black. $6,000 on eBay for that with the oval logo. Here we have a 2T stock copy. Now, it's a lot harder to find a 2T stock copy as well. $8,000 on eBay. Here we have a beautiful copy of a mono blank back right here. And this top price for this one, ooh, my gosh, that's really nice, isn't it? You see how that blank back is. You'll still see the tan from the seams on the other side. $8,000 on eBay. And then here we have a stereo, which there are only 2,202 copies pressed with Love Me Do. And that right there is the version 1 stereo. Shadow with the stereo bar on the top with the column back having P.S. I Love You and no hickey marks in the word honey. Discogs, $5,000 was the top price. And here we see a stereo add back. And the stereo add back, some people believe these are the very first pressing of the album with 25 great albums from VJ. Now this one right here on eBay, $14,668. And we see Heritage Auctions sold a copy recently. That was a column back, stereo version 1, in just immaculate condition, $52,000. All right, everybody, that's your Beatlemania. We'll see you soon. Thanks for watching.